Here to talk about his own lawsuit, the lawsuit filed by House Speaker John Boehner and the aforementioned I word, Senator Ron Johnson. He's the Republican senator from Wisconsin. He's a member of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations and a member of the Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs. Ron, we thank you for spending part of your recess with us this morning here on America's Forum.
Morning, JD. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fine, sir, and we know that recess this time of year is not exclusively vacation. No doubt you're meeting with your constituents. What are you hearing about the lawsuit you filed, and why did you decide to go ahead and file the appeal?
Well, first of all, most people that I'm talking to are very glad that I'm continuing to press the case because they realize that the lawsuit was dismissed on a legal technicality. I mean, the issue of standing, which was always the first hurdle that we had to clear. But even in the the opinion that Judge Griesbach handed down dismissing the case, he pointed out what a serious issue the case was, really talking about. And in his opinion, he said that if this, he basically quoted James Madison, that the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary in the same hands may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. So the judge does realize how serious the issue is that my case is trying to highlight. And so we're going to press forward with an appeal to the Seventh Circuit. Hopefully we can get the Seventh Circuit to grant me standing.
And Ron, while you continue with your lawsuit, pursuing that appeal, of course, a whole lot of talk and coverage on the lawsuit filed by House Speaker John Boehner concerning the president's executive overreach. Your thoughts on that lawsuit?
Well, of course, what Speaker Boehner and the House is trying to do is establish legislative standing as opposed to individual standing, which is what my lawsuit's all about. But again, we're all trying to highlight the exact same problem that, let's face it, JD, has been occurring over decades. The accumulation of greater and greater power in the hands of the executive in those agencies, as Jonathan Turley described the executive agencies, the fourth branch of government. We don't seem to write laws anymore in this country. We write these frameworks for the regulatory agencies to really write the laws. And one of the amicus briefs filed in support of my case talked about if you take the president, this administration's argument to its logical conclusion, a president in the future could cut everybody's taxes 50%. I don't think anybody thinks the president has that constitutional authority, but who could challenge it? I mean, who would show that they were harmed? So at some point in time, we've got to figure out a way to check this kind of unilateral governance on the part of a president or a future president. And from my standpoint, I believe the third branch of government, judiciary, it is long past time for the judiciary to get involved in these very important constitutional disputes regarding the separation of powers.
Ron, a lot of folks think back to high school civics and they understand that Congress has the power of the purse. You have lamented the dysfunction in the United States Senate and the curious leadership of Majority Leader Harry Reid. Explain why you guys can't cut spending or hold the purse tighten up the reins on the purse, so to speak.
Well, it all starts really in terms of how the federal government has expanded way beyond its enumerated powers. But what we've done is we've created all these mandatory spending problems. So 2/3 of the budget is off budget. I mean, it's on automatic pilot. It's out of control. You actually have to pass laws, which means both chambers have to pass a law, and then the president has to sign it if you're going to affect 2/3 of the budget in terms of reducing spending or stopping spending. So, congressional power of the purse has been dramatically reduced over the decades. And, of course, you're also finding it's a pretty blunt instrument, generally not supported by the public in terms of threatening shutdowns. And I've got a real problem with that, too, JD. The federal government causes enough harm to our economy. The federal government creates enough uncertainty, which is, I think, from my standpoint, probably the greatest reason we're having such a hard time recovering economically. So, yeah, you can say in theory Congress has the power of the purse. It's just not a power that's very easily used.
Which is why you are seeking redress in the courts, as is Speaker Boehner from the House. Now, the president, speaking of overreach, you and I both have heard the threats. The nation has heard the threats. The president saying he's going to use executive orders to essentially give amnesty to up to 5 million illegals now in the country. You serve on the Homeland Security Committee. What are the security implications of that decision, not to mention the executive overreach?
Well, the first implication is that they would create just one more incentive among, other incentives for illegal immigration. And that's the problem. If you want to solve this, if you want to solve illegal immigration, if you want to solve these unaccompanied children at the border, you have to stop the flow. You have to end all of the incentives, all of the inducements for illegal immigration. And let's face it, the Senate passes its comprehensive immigration reform bill. First of all, it wasn't going to solve the problem, even according to CBO, but included in that piece of legislation is $260 billion of welfare benefits for non-U.S. citizens. JD, that's a pretty powerful inducement to come to this country illegally. And then, of course, President Obama's deferred action on childhood admissions, that is really the proximate cause. That's the main incentive that's caused the unaccompanied children crisis at the border. Because basically you're telling the world, if you, as a minor, can get into America, you're home free. You're not going to be deported back to the country you came from. So we've got to end all these incentives. And, of course, that's what this administration utterly refuses to acknowledge, is its complicity in this problem. And they refuse to acknowledge what is the achievable goal of policy, which is to stop the flow, end all of those incentives.
Ron, only a couple of minutes remain, and I want to get to a point that seems to be divorced from the talking points, or where the talking points stand in stark contrast with reality. A recent Pew report tells us that 80% of the illegals coming in from Central America, while they could be classified as children, technically they are males ages 14 to 18. Yet the network coverage shows us pictures of infants and little children. And of course, every time people address this, they talk about, quote, the children. From a security aspect, given teenage males coming, some with gang involvement already or with drug running involvement, some who we understand have been recruited on a precondition of coming to this country, just how significant is the criminal element among these so-called children?
It could be very significant, and I'm not sure the 80%. I've seen the Homeland Security statistics kind of on a day-to-day basis, and I know it's over 50% of young males between 13 and 17, which very likely could be members of gangs. Gangs could be planted here by the drug smugglers to set up their distribution networks. So no, I mean, we have serious violence in Central America. That's just being transported right up here to America. And you're right, the media is covering the heart-wrenching stories of these young children.
Before we go, just a quick question. Yes or no on impeachment, the I word. Will there be any efforts to impeach this president?
No, there won't be.
All right.
Let's try something achievable. Let's challenge the president's unconstitutional actions in court.
And that's what you're doing, Ron Johnson, and we appreciate your insights on your efforts in court and on those other important stories. Thanks very much. Now, the question is out there. Ron dealt with it in a short, sweet fashion, but what do you think? Should President Obama be impeached? We want your opinion. You can tell us what you think and indeed vote in a poll, newsmax.com/Obama poll. At the end of the program, we'll show you the results, but we're just getting started. Back with more next on America's Forum.